crazy.
Moose, check this out, though. So the guy does 10 years. He can't sue. You can't sue a prosecutor, right? And not only that, if you Google his name, guess what comes up? The charges, not the conviction, not to overturn the conviction. The original charges always pop up first. So now he's a social pariah because he was accused of something with no facts, was found guilty, and he's struggling in life because of it. Imagine that.
On your record for life, and you never did it. Or if you're lucky enough, you signed a plea deal, so you do less time, but it's on your record for life, even though you didn't do it. Like, literally every attorney on both sides of the aisle say if the plea bargaining system didn't exist, the justice system in this country would collapse.
Well,
there's a... go ahead, JB. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, not just that, Moose, but also the fact of where are all these people, and I'm not saying you, if it don't apply, let it fly, but where's the outrage in this country that prosecutors have so much motherfucking power to steal somebody's life? That dude will never be whole. No matter what comes out, no matter what evidence he can produce. When he goes, he can't even get a job, bro. The dude can't get a job because let me tell you what companies do, even though it's illegal. They don't do background searches. They save the money on that, and they just do a Google search. So if it comes up, Moose likes to fuck Moose, and you don't, guess what? That's what they're going to see. It's a horrible, horrible system.
There's it's either a movie or a series on Netflix. It's about a girl who was raped, and she goes in and she tells the police, right, a few times. And they don't believe her, right? This is like the 80s, I believe. They don't believe her, and she gets prosecuted for lying, okay, really. And he's like a serial rapist, violent serial rapist, or a murderer, I believe. I can't remember. It's been a minute since I've seen it, but it's really bad. But it's a true story. Give that a watch.
Yeah, let's welcome Necro, Tomato, Sloan, and of course Dr. Jordan. Welcome to the stage. Looks like Sloan is new to the house. A couple of pink tickets. Moon still has his pink ticket. He just likes to hang on to pink things. But
well, when in Rome, Mojo. I mean, the name of your house. Come on.
Yep. In the muff. Hang on to your pink thing. Anyways, I want to get us steered back to the topic of anarchy. I think we've had some people take a shot at the definition. Necro, you're romanticized by the idea of anarchy. Why don't you give your definition?
Yeah, so it basically is, definitionally is that there are no sorts of restrictions on, any sorts of freedoms that we have, essentially. And the government is the only thing that limits those freedoms. So, authority.
But Necro, walk me through then how we have left-wing anarchy, right-wing anarchy, and one version says that property is theft, and then the other has their entire philosophy built on property rights being the most important right of all. How without a police force and a court system would you determine whether property is theft or property is a right?
Yeah, and so, that's one of the things why I think it would never work, ultimately. But, you have, the basic definition of right, or having property rights, is what would divide anarchists, definitely.
All right, you didn't answer my question. So who would decide? Who would have the authority to decide a dispute between a left-wing anarchist and a right-wing anarchist over property. Like, let's say you think that I have stolen it because you're a left-wing anarchist and think it's theft, and I have ownership of it, and so who would decide whether or not I get to stay or go with this property?
No one. There is no authority.
You should flip the anarchy coin. Just flip that. Heads your tails anarchy coin. So.
I mean, yeah, I'm trying to figure out how we decided. Do we just like play a game of Hungry Hippo and whoever wins? Do we flip the coin like Moose says? Do we do dueling pistols at 12 paces? Like, I'm just wondering, like, what do we do here?
You've answered your own question.
Rock, paper, scissors, and
You just take what you want.
Has more guts.
You shoot.
Yeah, your answer is as good as mine.
Tomato, go ahead, give me the answer.
You answered your own question. It's a paradox. It doesn't exist. Even the smart people on Clubhouse demanding an anarchist society, they're not serious. They're just fucking with you, because if anarchist societies existed, precisely zero of the Clubhouse anarchists would move there. It's just a debating point. It's not serious mojo.
Right. Well, and the interesting thing is that in the U.S., the vast majority of anarchists are right-wing anarchists, and globally, they're left-wing anarchists. And I totally agree with you that this is all just like some philosophical debate club shit, because the people that say that they're an anarchist, they don't do anything to mimic that. If they did, they would like go and move into Amish country, who are the closest thing that North America has to anarchists.
Yeah, I mean, I have friends who claim to believe in certain things, and they move to societies that espouse it. So they have credibility with me. Like, I've spoken ad nauseum about Singapore. Well, I have a lot of friends that wanted the Singaporean government. They moved there. They're happy. And then I have friends who wanted a more free, libertarian existence, and they've moved to New Hampshire. And both of them are valid. The people that are not valid are the people on Clubhouse who they complain all the time, but they never get off their ass and actually move to the place they claim they want to live.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. Did you read the story about the town in New Hampshire where when they got enough of these folks together to take over the city council, one of the major things they did was they got rid of the ordinance that forbid you from feeding bears. And by allowing people to feed the bears, there was no prohibition on it. The bears started getting more comfortable, got closer into the town, and then eventually human beings started getting mauled by the bears. So there's as much as I love freedom, there's certainly a level in which if your love for freedom leads you to do stupid things, which is what I think anarchists do. I feel like anarchists are the ones that have they've decided to just go to the extreme of this idea of freedom, this notion of freedom, and to the point where they will ignore common sense. And so I don't know if you've read that story, but it's an interesting read to understand what happens if the anarchists were to get their way. We'd essentially get mauled by bears because they're stupid.
You see Wild Wild Country documentary? That's a form of anarchy, I'd say. I mean, at one point they actually, the whole Raj Mahaji cult thing, and the infamous Sheila that was his assistant. At one point, she was literally orchestrating an assassination attempt on a senator in, where were they? Washington State, I think, or Oregon.
Well, I would put forth the proposition that the average human being without children wants to live in a more anarchic place, right? In general, if you don't have children, you're okay with drugs being legal and it being legal to ride a motorcycle 100 miles an hour without a helmet, and legal gambling. Like, there's all kinds of freedoms that you're in favor of if you don't have children. On the other hand, most people that have children want to live in a society where those freedoms are restricted, because it's just obvious, right? If you have enough children, some of them are going to be born with no willpower. And if you have a child that has no willpower, and you happen to live in a society that allows motorcycles without helmets and fentanyl and gambling, like eventually it's going to fuck up your children's lives. So even within the concept of, does a human being want to live in anarchy, or does a human being want to live in a highly restricted society? I think the same human being could want different things based on their life cycle mojo.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think, though, the anarchists that I've run into, especially the ones on this app, and there's a small handful of them, they seem to be comfortable with being oppressed. They just don't want to be oppressed by government. They'll let any other entity. In fact, they would erect a society that mimics a government, as long as they don't. They're just anti-government. They're not anti-oppression. They're not even pro-freedom, really. What they're really looking for is just this, the elimination of government, and that seems to be their calling card. That's what they're really begging for. Hold on. I just got the laughy emoji from one of the anarchists on this app. Maybe she disagrees. If I was wrong, I'd love for her to come up here and tell me that I'm wrong, that she wants to be oppressed. I mean, the same person that gave me the laughy emoji that hates the state and says that she's an anarchist lives with an abusive boyfriend that doesn't allow her to speak on Clubhouse. If he's around, he tells her that she's got to get off. So we've all seen that. In fact, we were hoping to do wellness checks. She probably wouldn't appreciate the wellness check, because in order to do a wellness check, you'd have to call a government official to go do the wellness check. So I don't know. Maybe she wants to come up, but Tomato, go ahead.
I think that it's hard for me to believe there's anyone that stupid, and the reason is anthropologists and evolutionary biologists have data on all societies before government, and the reality of being a human before government was, first of all, we have clear evidence that 20% of the men had sex with all the women. And in order for 20% of the men to have sex with all the women, they murdered a massive percentage of the weaker men. And you can see in the anthropological record, right, in societies before government, more than 40% of men died from murder. Whereas today, because of the benefit of government, less than 1% of men die from murder. We also have records that, like, civilization never existed without a government, because for the simple reason, like, why should you bother to build a machinery, or why should you bother to build a tool when, in the absence of government, some stronger man is just going to come and steal it from you and kill you? So in the absence of government, life is nasty, brutish, and short. And for that reason, it seems like we have a lot of retarded morons on Clubhouse. It's hard for me to believe that there's anyone that's that retarded. I'm done speaking.
Could you name one of them?
No.
So I have to challenge that for a second, Tomato. It's possible, but I would think that 20% of the men, if we look back at our lineage, there would be such inbreeding depression, profound inbreeding depression, genetic bottlenecks, and also the heterogeneity that we see today with all these males who are pretty diverse. I would think we would be much more homogenous as a gender, and we're not. In fact, that's why we have so many problems today, because we're trying to accommodate the softness of all the male, the male fragility, the domineering male, the toxic masculinity.
How about the narcissism? Does this play in at all?
Of course it does.
Can you just say the word, please?
Narcissism.
I think that's a record. That's a record, as long as he said taking it to actually say it.
Yeah.
I love it. Let me ask you this. If you could snap your finger now, is there anybody on stage that would want the state to just be completely gone and have no government at all? Is there anyone on the stage that desires that?
Absolutely not. I have a question for Tomato, though, because I can't get past what he said. If I can ask, or should I wait till he get more people.
Well, you could certainly offer up a question, but I wouldn't ask him. I would ask him.
No, I love your.
And I would ask Tomato. I wouldn't ask Tomato.
Oh, okay. I'll ask you, sir. Did you say that people without children want to live in an anarchist society? That they would prefer that over people who have children? I mean, before I continue, I just want to make sure I heard you correctly.
Yeah, that I never understood, Tomato.
You heard correctly. I would absolutely benefit from that explanation if Tomato could.
Because I would like to know why you think people who don't have children want to live in a lawless society where there's no law and order. Why would people who don't have children want other people's badass children coming through their neighborhoods, robbing, stealing their shit, shooting them, killing them to take their property? Why? I just, maybe a little bit more clarity, please.
Sure, let me clarify. I never meant it to be a binary. I never meant it to say all people without children want to live in a lawless society. But all human beings are on a spectrum, right? And if you interview every human being about how much law and order they want, how much anarchy they want, what you will find is that childless people, and especially young childless people, want more anarchy. Now, they may not want 3 times the anarchy, but they want 5 or 10% more. Now, the issues in which you can see this are issues of, A, should drugs be legalized, right? There's a very clear gap between the opinion on drugs about people with children and people that don't have children. But also you see it on issues like motorcycle helmet laws. You also see it on issues like drunk driving laws. In general, young people that don't have children are a little bit more desiring of anarchy. Now, even on Clubhouse, you can see it in the neighborhoods that people live in. So, for example, in New York City, for example, a neighborhood with a lot of anarchy, a lot of crazy, filthy shit going on is Bushwick. Well, if you go to Bushwick, you'll see it's mostly filled with people that don't have kids. On the other hand, a neighborhood where it's orderly and there's no crazy shit going on is Park Slope. So if you go to Park Slope, you'll notice it's a huge number of people with kids. So within even a city, you will find young childless people gravitating, moving when they can to the neighborhoods that are a little more sketchy and edgy and dicey and exciting, and people with kids moving to the more
I'll give you Tomato, the drugs. I'll meet you there. Parents intuitively sure keep drugs away from my kids' schools, of my neighborhoods. DUIs. I'm gonna have to question mark there because I don't think that it's. I don't know if that means you're implying that married people or people with kids are less likely to drive intoxicated, because I don't think there's any truth there. Or is it you just have this reckless, like, people without kids, they have less to lose, they don't have to go home and take care of diapers, no one's relying on them. They can live a little on the edge, even though we're in a world now with Uber. I think the DUI thing was that, like, it's just, when you just throw that in as one of your laundry points, it gets blended in there a little bit. So I have to, that just stood out to me. I don't think there's data or to validate that folks people who don't have kids or are childless are more reckless, are less likely to care if some drunk driver just killed an innocent family.
Well, it sounds like you agree with 80% of what I said, and you think I'm stupid about 20%. So I'll take that as a win. I'm not even going to argue the point.
Stupid was your word. I never.
Well, I use provocative, irritating words just for effect.
Interesting. Yeah, the DUI point in the motorcycle helmet. I never would have. If I had to write a list of anarchist behavior, the motorcycle helmet point, I don't know that would be on the list. Dumb choices, perhaps, living on the edge, being reckless, but...
Well, no, I would say 4 years ago, Mojo and I used to get in polite disagreements, very polite disagreements. Mojo 4 years ago, to my recollection, was more of a classical libertarian. So Mojo, I recall, argued in favor of everyone who wants being allowed to ride a motorcycle without a helmet. And I don't criticize Mojo for having that view, but it was something that I remember pretty clearly him arguing for. And I argued strongly against that. And I puzzled over that for like 3 years of arguing. And then I kind of realized that Mojo was imagining like a young man with no responsibilities riding without a helmet. And I think he was saying, shit, if you're a young man and you have no responsibilities, you should have the freedom to ride without a helmet. Whereas for me, I was imagining a man with like 6 kids to support who was riding without a helmet, and by killing himself by riding without a helmet, he was leaving orphans. And so I think that Mojo and I's disagreement was not a philosophical disagreement. It was just a disagreement about who we imagine when we think about public policies.
Yeah, I can dig it. I dig it. Nye, also apparently childless adults are six more times likely to not put the cap back on the toothpaste.
Yeah, that's why we need to have children to remind us to, always put on pants as well.
A lot of the political arguments I've heard on Clubhouse they're not really political. They're arguments between people that have different life circumstances. Like let me cut to the chase. I see a lot of crazy shit being advocated by people on Clubhouse, and I just know listening to them, they don't have kids and grandkids. And I'm not criticizing people that don't have kids. I'm just saying very often their brain just doesn't work the same way as people that have a lot of kids and grandkids.
Yeah, but what you're really saying is that when you have kids and grandkids, you become more risk adverse, and I think that's fair to point out. That being said, sometimes playing it safe is not the right way to go either. Some people are so risk adverse that they would bubble wrap their children, and I think that there's a risk in harming your children by being too risk adverse. Would you disagree?
No, I agree with you completely. But the issue on the table is society's rules. And I think in general that whether for right or wrong, the average person that has a bunch of kids wants to live in a society where the government does more and the government has more restrictions. So, for example, I think drunk driving, let me go back to the drunk driving point, even though it's unpopular, right? In general, most young childless people, if someone is caught drunk driving once, they'll give them a pass. They're like, okay, pay a fine and you get your license back. Even, I think if you survey people that are childless, they might give people 2 chances. Okay, you're caught drunk driving twice, take a class, pay a big fine. Whereas my experience is people that have young children, they're like, fuck it. If you're caught drunk driving once, fuck off, we're taking your license away for life, because the risk of you killing my kids is so great, I don't want to take the chance. So I actually do, at least among the people I socialize with in real life, I do notice a difference in attitudes towards drunk driving between people with kids and people without kids. And you may say, oh, you're wrapping your kid in bubble wrap. To protect your kid from drunk drivers, you're wrapping him in bubble wrap. I don't see it that way. I think that there are reasonable things you could do to protect the lives of your kids. That people who have kids they just want a different government than people without. And I would say the government of Singapore is like a government designed by people that have a bunch of kids. The government of Singapore protects your kids a lot, whereas the government in New Hampshire may protect your kids very little. The government in New Hampshire, for all I know, it may allow more motorcycle riding without a helmet. It may allow more gambling. New Hampshire may even be softer on drunk drivers than Singapore.
So here's what I would do if I were king for a day. When it comes to drunk driving or intoxicated driving or whatever, I would simply, I wouldn't even necessarily outlaw it. I would simply say that if you get into an accident or if you harm somebody, the penalty should have a 10x multiplier. We should make the punishment for if a bad thing occurs while you're doing this behavior, that the punishment is larger. The one thing that's interesting, you can find these studies where they've compared drivers that are tired versus drivers that are drunk, and people that are intoxicated on alcohol can drive better than people that at a certain level of fatigue mentally. And so we don't have any laws, that clearly target people that drive tired, but there's a lot of people that do. Whether it's the end of their workday or the beginning of their workday, there's a lot of people that fall asleep at the wheel. And we don't hear anybody talking about that.
Roger, what about people?
Why would you think that talking now while I'm talking would be the right time for you to talk? How about wait till I finish, and then whoever that was, you can respond. Here's what I would propose is if you pull somebody over for a traffic violation and let's say you find that they're intoxicated, let's say they ran through a stoplight, because you could do that sober or drunk. I would just say whatever the penalty would have been when sober, I would 10x the penalty if they were drunk. If they harmed somebody in an accident, whatever that penalty might have been if they were sober, including manslaughter, I would just 10x the sentencing for that. I think that if we just had really harsh punishments if something bad happens while you're intoxicated, I think what we would do is build a culture around people being a lot more careful, and if they choose to drink, which I think is perfectly okay, then they should take the the risk that comes along with that, which is a very harsh punishment if they do harm. But if somebody was driving home and they've had a few beers and they get home safely, I really don't care.
What about forcing people to have a certain level of insurance to cover the damage they do? Are you okay with that?
No, I don't think mandating insurance is the answer to anything.
So let's try to do this. I'm worth $1,000. You're worth $1 million. Okay, you have a grandchild.
I would say 4.5, but go ahead.
Okay, you're worth $4.5 million, right? Is that what you want to be worth?
Closer to reality. Let's go.
Okay, good. You're worth $4.5 million. That's great. And I'm worth $1,000, right?
You're worth more than that, but go ahead. You can value yourself wherever you like. Go ahead.
Well, it doesn't matter what I'm worth. Here's the point. I run over your grandchild and kill them or maim them for life. Okay? Now, you chose not to have insurance, and you fight me in court, and you don't pay it, and I end up being screwed. Is that okay with you?
I don't think I understand your point. Can you try to explain it a little bit better? I'm trying to understand. Make your point.
You're worth $4.5 million, right?
Sure.
And I sue you because you killed my grandchild, right? And the court system resists my ability to pay it off, and I die before the court gets it around to it, or your lawyers are better than my lawyers. Is that okay with you?
No, I don't think the justice system should be tied to how much money you have. In fact, I think that's one of the perversions that we have in our justice system is everything from cash bail to what type of representation you have in a court is far too highly tied to the amount of money that you have. I don't think that's a justice system.
Okay, let me see if I understand your point. And I don't mean to interrupt you because you're right. I don't want to interrupt you. But I find your position to be morally reprehensible, and it may be that I don't understand it. So maybe it isn't morally reprehensible. You don't think someone should be compelled to have insurance, right?
No, I do not.
Okay, and if I'm worth,
although I think it's a good idea, I do think it's a good idea. I just don't think it should be mandatory.
Okay.
I would advise family and friends to have insurance because it's a good idea, it's wise, but I don't think